Good afternoon. I'm Hannah Thibodeau. Welcome to CBC News Network. We start with the latest on the visit of the European Commission President to Canada today. It's Ursula von der Leyen's first official visit here, and right now she's on her way to Ottawa for a couple of events, including an address to the House of Commons a little later today. Von der Leyen has spent much of the day in Kingston, Ontario, holding bilateral talks with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and meeting members of the military. At a media briefing, the two leaders spoke about the strong ties between Canada and Europe. The Prime Minister also broke some news concerning Ottawa's ongoing support for Ukraine.
Today, I can announce that we are extending our engineering training as part of Operation Unifier until at least the fall, and deploying CAF medical trainers to help Ukrainian forces with combat medical skills. We're also investing $3 million for demining in Ukraine and working with the EU to deliver energy equipment to Ukraine for their power grid.
And the CBC's Janice McGregor was in Kingston for von der Leyen's visit and has more on what she and Trudeau had to say.
I have to say, maybe it's just the location here at CFB Kingston, but the visuals of the backdrop, the timing coming as it does so much on the heels of the one-year anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Look, this first official visit of Ursula von der Leyen to Canada, it was supposed to happen last fall, had to be postponed following the passing of Queen Elizabeth. In this context now, heading into this spring, the key battles to come on the ground in Ukraine, very much giving off the vibe of a war summit here, and the first of kind of two important, critical conversations between Western allies. Von der Leyen in Canada right now, but she is on her way tomorrow down to Washington. And she's always had more of a transatlantic focus, frankly, as a European politician, really nurturing those relationships, but especially now Europe drawing kind of closer to its allies across the ocean at a time when the threat from Russia has arguably never been so great. There is always a question, though, about Canada's military capacity, whether it is stepping up enough. Certainly when you go to NATO meetings and cover those, there's always a conversation, pushed by the Americans especially, about whether Canada spends enough militarily and therefore is in a position really to contribute to a war like this as much as some would hope. It was interesting, we heard from President von der Leyen on this question of whether Canada has stepped up as much as allies would want it to. Listen to what she said.
Canada is doing much more than its fair share already compared to others, and is going way beyond what is necessary. So I want to thank Canada for that. It's also thanks to this support from Canada that Ukraine, at the very beginning of this war, was immediately able to resist this invasion. So I want to thank you for a support that goes way beyond what is the average.
Way beyond what is the average. Probably music to the ears of the Canadian government, which sometimes finds itself on the defensive on this issue, but also credit where credit's due. It is true that Canada has been leading training missions. It has been active in NATO efforts in Eastern Europe for some time. All of that part of a readiness for the hypothetical day when Russia might be a threat again, and indeed that day has come. Just talk a little bit on another strategic front, though. Von der Leyen now is moving on to a photo op at a company here in Kingston that recycles lithium batteries. Now, you might say, why is she doing that? Well, this company expanded into the US, expanded into Germany, but lithium in particular, right? Europe is trying to create what it calls a critical minerals club where Western allies can source this amongst themselves instead of no longer having to rely on China. We know how difficult it is for democracies to kind of pull away from the economic ties they now have with their trade with China, but the position it puts them in when they are up against a more hostile foreign policy in China, and they want to send a message to China too, frankly, that they're willing to compete with them. They don't depend on them. They aren't sitting back being a victim as China threatens to get into the game in Ukraine, potentially supplying Russia's military as well.
Janice, let's talk a bit more about, Canada helping Europe, in particular, pivot away from the use of energy, in particular Russian energy. And it was a big topic. So let's discuss that a bit more.
Yeah, see what I mean about many of the conversations at these talks amounting to a war summit? Weaning Europe off of Russian energy, very much another theme of these conversations, because we know about the energy available in Canada, but frankly, hasn't always been, selling it to the European market. That is a point that opposition leader Pierre Poilievre made, placing the blame squarely on the shoulders of Justin Trudeau's Liberal government.
Europe needs our natural gas. When Trudeau took office, we had 15 proposed natural gas export terminals on his desk. Not a single one has been completed. And the Japanese Prime Minister, the German Chancellor, now the European Commissioner are already all asking for our natural gas. And he's saying, no, go get it from Putin. He's helping fund foreign dictatorships by shutting out our industry. We'll turn dollars for dictators into paychecks for our people. We will bring it home.
There is no hesitation. We will continue to work very hard to be there for our European partners now and long into the future. Canada continues to export natural gas and oil to the world, including through investments that this government oversaw in the largest private sector investment in Canada's history with LNG Canada on the West Coast.
Both leaders were making the point that natural gas infrastructure, LNG infrastructure really is as much a private sector decision as a government one. I think when it comes to the approvals process, they may see some pushback there. But one point that von der Leyen made on this was that Canada actually has increased its production. It's just not going to a port to Tidewater necessarily. A lot of it's going south, displacing energy kind of from the U.S. down into Mexican ports that then go elsewhere. Trudeau was talking about how they are exporting more to Asia as well, sending energy there. This is a global market. You don't necessarily have to be sending it directly to Europe to be helping Europe wean itself off of Russian oil and gas. The other thing they will tell you is that investing in renewables, hydrogen, for example, that is playing the long game. And certainly officials here are very much hopeful that there will be a lot of jobs in that area in the future when the private sector gets on board with that.
That is the CBC's Janice McGregor at CFB Kingston in Eastern Ontario.